So today we are finding unknown dimensions of solids using volume and algebra. So I've got a couple of example problems that we're going to do here today. The first one is a cylinder. So it says the cylinder has a volume of 11,264 pi cubic inches. Find the height. So notice we don't know the height. We know the radius is 16 inches. And of course we have the volume right there. So we're going to set up an algebra equation to figure this out. And we are going to use the formula for the volume of the cylinder. Now, for a cylinder, we know the volume is pi times the radius squared times the height, and of course, well, that equals the volume, okay? So, pi is just a number, so I'll keep that there. We know the radius of this cylinder, it's 16, so I can write 16 squared. And then the height, in this case, we don't know. I'll just put x equals the volume, and of course, they told us the volume, 11,264 pi. Don't forget that pi, because that makes a big difference. 11,264 is a lot different than 11,264 times pi. In fact, this is over 3 times bigger. All right, so now, we've got a bunch of numbers here. Let's simplify this a bit, because if you look carefully here, these two numbers multiplied together are just going to be a number, right? 16 squared is 256 times pi, so we can simplify this as 256 pi. And then I'll just drop down the rest of this. Okay? So I've simplified it a bit. Now this just becomes an equation where you have a number times x equals a number. And we know how to solve equations like this. If it says we're taking x and multiplying it by 256 pi, to solve for x, we're going to divide both sides by 256 pi. All right. Now, when I do that, the 256 pi undo each other, and all that's left over here is x equals, on the other side, we've got pi on top and pi on the bottom, so pi divided by pi undoes each other. So really, all we need to do on their calculator is 11,264 divided by 256, which, if you put in your calculator, it's 44. So we know the height of this cylinder has to be 44 inches. And if you're not sure, you can always take that height, take that radius, put in the formula, calculate it out. It should come back out to 11,264 pi. All right? Let's do a slightly harder one now, because the cone is next. And the cone has a slightly harder formula, if you recall. All right, this one says a cone has a volume of 968 pi centimeters cubed. Find the radius. Okay, so this time we're missing the radius, not the height. But let's start with that formula. The formula of a cone is very much like a cylinder. Pi times the radius squared times height. That's the cylinder formula. But with a cone, we have to also divide by 3 or multiply by a third, whichever you prefer. All right, but that is the formula for the volume of a cone. All right, now let's substitute in here the numbers we know. All right, pi is just a number. The radius we don't know, so I'll call that x. I mean, we could leave it as r if we wanted to. I'll call it x. The height we do know is 24 divided by 3 equals the volume, which is 968 pi. Don't forget that pi once again. All right. Now, let's simplify this a bit, because there's a lot of numbers over here. There's a pi, there's a times 24, there's a divided by 3. These are all just regular numbers. So let's combine them together. 24 divided by 3 is 8. Multiplied by pi, this is just going to be 8 pi. And then, of course, times x squared equals 968 pi. So notice, all I did here was simplified these numbers down, and I just simplified it down to 8 pi. Okay? So now we have a pretty simple equation. Something times x squared equals some number. So to undo this, I'm going to divide both sides by pi. And when I do that, the 8 pi's undo each other, but the x squared drops down. The equals drops down. On the other side, I've got pi on top and pi on the bottom, so when they divide, they undo each other. So really all I need to put in my calculator is 968 divided by 8. That comes out to 121. All right, but notice we're not done yet. We're trying to find x I have x squared. So I'm going to have to do one more step. I'm going to have to undo that x squared. To undo squaring, we have to square root. And what we do to one side, we have to do the other. All right, so squaring and square rooting undo each other. So I'm left with x over here. On the other side, the square root of 121. If you recall, when we take the square root of a number, when we're undoing x squared and solving and taking the square root of a number, yes, the square root of 121 is 11, but technically, x could also be negative 11. Because when we undo x squared, we have two possible answers, the positive and the negative, right? Fortunately, because we're talking about a length, that can't be negative 11 centimeters long. So even though mathematically it could be negative 11, we're going to throw it out because it doesn't make any sense for a length to be negative 11. So I think we've just found our radius, 11 centimeters. There it is. All right. So notice, to do these problems, the main thing is knowing your volume formulas. All right. If it helps, write down the formula on top and then just substitute the numbers in. It makes it a lot easier. Then you don't have to try to memorize the formula and substitute numbers in at the same time. And then go step by step. Pay attention to the pies, all right? If you've got a pie over here and you divide it by a pie, they simply cancel out. It makes life a lot easier, all right? So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, please hit that like button. Also subscribe because it really helps us out. But with that being said, good luck on your math and I will see you next time.